We're talking about the laws of nature and all the different laws that go up to make our discussion on the gift of faith. We're discussing the law of buoyancy and what makes an object float. Why doesn't it sink? What makes it float? So we're going to see in our discussion John chapter 6, verses 16 to 21 in the life and ministry of Jesus Christ. When the evening was come, his disciples went down unto the sea. We're reading from Mark chapter 16, verse 16, through to verse 21. And he entered into a ship and went over the sea towards Capernaum, and it was now dark, and Jesus was not come unto them. And the sea arose by reason of a great wind that blew. And when they had rowed about 25 or 30 furlongs, they see Jesus walking on the sea. And drawing nigh unto the ship, and they were afraid. And he said unto them, It is I, be not afraid. Then they willingly received him into the ship, and immediately the ship was at the land whither they went. Actually, you are seeing two miracles exercised here. First of all, Jesus is walking on the water, and secondly, that boat was out in the middle of the Sea of Galilee, and all of a sudden it is now at the shore. Let's look at the one of Jesus walking on the water. How many of you would like to go out with me and get out on that muddy Fraser River, and we'll go a-walking on the water? Here comes Jesus, see him walking on the water. You want to come out walking with me? Why wouldn't you like to come out walking with me on the water? On the water. Eh? Why shouldn't we all go out and walk on the water at this point? People say, well, okay, if I could see you walking on the water, I'd believe in miracles. Show me a miracle, and then I'll believe it. Well, you know, there are some people that would never believe a miracle even if they saw it with their eyes, and Jesus knew that. You know that? Sure. They went to him one day, and some of the scribes and Pharisees, and they said, look, show us a miracle, and then we'll believe it. Jesus said, look, the only miracle you're ever going to believe is the miracle of Jesus Christ dying and going into the grave and rising again. And he likened it unto Jonah being swallowed by the fish and being heaved out of the fish's belly in 3 days. He says, if you will believe the fact that I died, or that I will die and rise again, then he said, you will believe a miracle. But then why do we teach miracles and signs and wonders? Why do we teach it then? Because we believe in it, right? And Jesus says, these signs shall follow them that believe. And those who believe are going to see miracles following them. Isn't that neat? You like that idea? I like it too. So if people don't believe in it, and they never ever will believe in it, then this is why they're never going to see a miracle. And even though one was performed in front of them, they say, oh, there's some psychological reason for that, or that's way out. I don't believe that at all. Just tell somebody who has received a miracle of healing or has had something happen to their bodies and they know it's a miracle, and you'll never convince them that it wasn't a miracle. But we're not called to convince people that don't want to believe anyway. No. We see Jesus walking on the water. Now I'm going to ask you the question, which I asked you last time. Is what Jesus did contrary to nature? Don't answer. Don't answer. Just think about it for a minute. Is what Jesus did contrary to nature? Now we're going to look at some more illustrations. There is what we call a law of gravity. A law of gravity. And I think that probably many of you know what the law of gravity is. The law of gravity is very, very simple. I will show it to you here. See this pen? I'm going to throw it up into the air, and I'm going to let it fall. There is the law of gravity. What goes up must come down, right? There is a law, and this is the law. This is the law of gravity. It is F is equal to mg squared 2. When I was in Trinidad teaching on these things, and I wrote this little item on the blackboard, and I said, what is this law? Does anybody know what it is? And some character stood up and he said, faith is equal to Mary Goddard squared. So there is a law that says that something is, when it's thrown up into the air, it's going to come back down to the earth again. Now there's another kind of a law that we want to take a look at, and this law is the law of aerodynamics. I'll just, from easy writing, I'll call it airlift here. Airlift. The law of airlift or aerodynamics. Now this is a very, very big law, and I know those of you who are technically minded and work in the area of building airplanes, and you're very highly intelligent. I'm sure that some of you can rattle off that law just by a moment's time. But I personally couldn't memorize it. One of the engineers where I had been working at a place where they were very highly qualified in this sort of thing gave me part of the law, and I couldn't even remember even a little smidgen of it, because apparently it's a very big, long law, but it's got something to do with relative velocity, wind thrust, drag coefficient, etc., 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 which in essence means that if there's the proper wind thrust and all things working as it should, an airplane is going to fly. Now, you see, I can reach down and pick up that object you see that I dropped. But in picking it up, it'd be very easy to pick it up. But if I were to go out now to the Vancouver International Airport and try to put my hand under one of those big 747 jets and try to pick it up, what would happen? Well, somebody would look at me and say, what's going on here? Well, you know very well I couldn't do that. Well then, if this little object that's so light that I can pick up, how can it be that that big bird, I look at those huge things just floating across the sky, and I say, oh my, look at that, how can that huge monster stay up there in the sky? It's too heavy to stay up in the sky. It's supposed to fall. Well, what makes the thing fly? Is this law of airlift contrary then to the law of gravity? Because you see, the law of gravity says that thing is supposed to come back down to the earth again, and indeed, of course, of a time it may, either by accident or by design. You see, the Wright brothers, when they first made the airplane, they believed in the law of airlift, and they proved it. And we go back many years ago, and now we see what's happening today with flight and how fast airplanes travel. Why, it's absolutely amazing. I remember in World War II, these double-winged airplanes were still quite a novelty, and we used to go out and lay on the lawn and watch them do the loopity-loops, you know. Well, it's quite a common thing now, you know. I mean, they can't travel past the speed of sound. They're not with it. So there's that law then of airlift that says that an airplane is going to fly. Let's look at some laws of nature. Now this is going into something altogether different. Some laws of nature. Here's another one up here. And what are these laws of nature? Well, of course, we know that the weatherman has trouble understanding the laws of nature, because he says that there's an air current coming in this way and another air current coming in this way, and it's going to be bright and sunny today. And what happens? It rains. There are some other laws, apparently, that said another air current was going to come in from some other direction, and he wasn't quite aware of it yet. And this seems to be the story day after day after day after day. I think I'm going to get myself a little pet turtle, and when it rolls over and it shows its tummy, then I'll know it's going to rain. Well, I'll tell you what, I used to have a very good forecaster, and that was my knees. I used to have a terrible case of arthritis in my knees. And every time the weather changed, got cold or rainy, I could always tell. And my knees would bother me. But you see, I was a miracle of healing. And I think I'd rather have that than to have a forecaster on my knees saying what the weather's going to be like. Laws of nature. And let's look at some of these things. When a wind comes in at any given time of the day, there are laws that says that there is going to be a wind. It'll come in from a certain direction. A air current will bring it in. So we're going to see Mark chapter 4, verses 37 to 39. And it says, there arose a great storm of wind, and the waves beat into the ship so that it was now full. And he was in the hinder part of the ship, asleep on the pillow. And they awoke him and say to him, Master, help, help, help. How many of you have ever been out on the Sea of Galilee? Have you ever been to Israel? Let me see your hands. Any of you ever been to Israel? Never been there? Oh, my. Well, that's a treat in itself. That is a beautiful blessing. And out on the Sea of Galilee, of course, at certain times of the day, well, it could happen at any given time, a sudden squall will come up. And there's a certain row of hills, valleys, where wind currents will come flying through very, very quickly. And a squall will come up extremely suddenly on the waters. And it can be a nice placid lake, you know, a sea. And when the winds come up, that sea can be turned into a raging monster. And of course, these fishermen are out there in this little fishing boat, and this sudden storm came up. Well, what happened is they were so aghast with this whole thing that they called Jesus, and Jesus is sound asleep in the back of the boat. Yes, Jesus got tired. I wonder if we ever stop to think of the humanity of Jesus, huh? I wonder who washed his clothes when they got dirty. Or did he always go around in a nice white garment, always clean and neat and shining and sparkling? His feet never got dirty. He never got thirsty. He never got hungry. He just walked around sort of in a cloud all the time, you know? Let's look at his humanity. And in looking at his humanity, we will be able to minister like him. He said, the works I do shall you do also. Did he not say this? So until we can see the humanity of Jesus and we think that he can't be possibly extremely human like you or I, then we'll never ever be able to see miracles under our hands. So here we see Jesus very much sound asleep. Tired as all get out. He'd been ministering. And of course, the disciples had been trying to bail out of their boat fast as they could. And what happened is that they couldn't get the water out as fast as the water was coming in. I had a situation arise about a year ago. We had just moved into a new house. And of course, it rained, and it rained, and it rained. It was like Noah's flood. And a young man, who is now my son-in-law, came to stay with us. He was getting quite interested in my daughter. Well, what happened was the storm was coming so much that the drain pipes weren't holding the water properly and getting it drained away, and we were getting water in our basement. And it was arising fast. Well, he was very tired. He'd just gotten in from a long business trip where he was working. And he'd just gotten in, and he was very tired, and it was fairly early in the morning. I didn't want to wake him up. So here I am, getting buckets and everything, trying to get this water out, because I didn't really want to disturb him. Finally, it was getting the best of me. It was rising too fast. And I called him and he said, "Oh, please, come and help." Well, it was right at that time that this young man won my heart, because he just took over so nicely, you know, and he just showed me where the water was running in, and he got rid of the source of the water, and then we didn't have any more flood, you see. Me, I'd have just kept bailing out the water. Well, Jesus wanted to get rid of the source of their problem. But you see, Jesus stood up in the middle of the boat. It says he arose and he rebuked the wind and the sea and said unto the sea. Now, you know, we have a strange notion in that when we start to minister to something, we must use either a multitude of words or whatever in order to get the job done. But do you know something? That Jesus spoke only 3 little words. He directed himself to the problem, right? What was the problem? The wind and the waves? The problem really wasn't the water in the boat at this point. The problem was the wind and the waves. That was what was causing the problem. And he didn't stand up there in the boat and say, oh, God, you know the situation we're in. How can you stand to see us out here in the middle of this lake? Oh, we're going to sink for sure. Oh, God, help us. He didn't get up there and start screaming and hollering and carrying on. And you know something? At that particular moment, now I know he went out and prayed lots out in the mountains. But on that particular occasion, he didn't even stop to pray. He didn't get up and say, well, now listen a minute, you disciples. Let me have a half an hour prayer here before we go into this. So that he could feel like he was, sort of holy enough to minister. Sometimes, when we get up in the morning, we're not just altogether feeling like we're really Christians. We sort of feel miserable. So, if anybody were to come to us to pray, and we were supposed to pray for them, I need prayer. We'd say, look, I think I better go out into my closet for a half an hour and pray, and then maybe I can get up enough faith to minister to you. But Jesus stood up in the boat, and he said 3 little words, peace, be still. And what happened? The wind and the waves were calmed. I want to ask the question again. Was what Jesus did contrary to nature? Now something else happened. It says that the wind ceased and there was a great calm. These disciples must have scratched their heads a number of times and said, look, what is with this guy anyway? Because it says they wondered, they feared exceedingly and said one to another, what manner of man is this that even the wind and the sea obey him? What kind of a character is this? They've been walking around the countryside with this man. Tell me, if you were Jesus, come on, let's just picture something here. If you were Jesus and you had never been heralded, you were unknown, nobody knew who you were a Maggie who? Sure. A lot of people, they call me by name, Mary Goddard. Mary who? Never heard of me. So what? Jesus who? How would you get them? You are now going to give a message. You are going to minister now, and you're going to manifest God. Are you going to find yourself a little pulpit and get up in front of a pulpit and say, now let us sing hymn number 222, now hymn number 565, now we pray, now we sit, now we stand? Is that how you're going to convince people that you have the power of God? Well, you see what Jesus did. He began immediately to do signs and wonders. Oh, that's fantastic. And as he began to do these things, then his disciples believed in him. But you know something? These disciples here in the boat, do you know that they were great believers? Oh, the disciples were great believers. They all believed they were going to sink. Right? Help, help, we're going to sink, they said. Now, Jesus said something to them. He said, where is your faith? Well, where was their faith? Where was their faith? There's something very, very beautiful about this story. And he didn't say, have faith in faith at this point. Remember, he said, have faith in God. Where is your faith? Do you know that their faith was asleep in the back of the boat? He is our faith. Isn't that correct? We're too often, we have faith in our circumstances, faith in everything around us, faith in everything that's gone wrong. We believe that we're going to lose our job tomorrow. We believe we're going to be sick. We believe that our kids are going to end up in ruin. We believe so many things. Where is our faith? And something I have learned is this, that when we start to believe in the man who is asleep in the back of the boat, then we're going to find many more miracles not only taking place in our lives, but we're going to be able to minister to others. Will you come back again and join us next time? We're going to talk some more about the laws of nature.